So I've been really, really looking forward to this next stage of the symposium, and of course we'll be joined by some extraordinary special guests. But I'll just let the rest of you come in and settle down. First of all, did you have a good morning tea? Yes? Great food. Yum. Just too short, Lucy. It's got us on this tight schedule, far out. Got a lot to pack in. Alrighty. So as the rest of you are making your way in, I would like to introduce our next special guests and move straight into the program because as you all know, we are being joined by a very special guest known and loved by Australians and the world over. I'm referring, of course, to Australian icon Olivia Newton-John, an extraordinary and accomplished performer. In fact, one of the world's best-selling music artists of her time, a 4-time Grammy Award winner, singer, songwriter, actress, entrepreneur and activist who has dazzled the world over since we first laid eyes on her. She is also, of course, equally well known as a humanist and activist for so many causes. And since opening up about her use of medicinal cannabis, Olivia has become a standard bearer for this people-led movement around the world, positively influencing discussions through her inspiring advocacy. Shortly, Olivia will join us from her ranch in California for an intimate discussion about medicinal cannabis. She will be joined by her husband, Amazon John, who will be joining us live from the Cannabis Science Conference, which is taking place in Long Beach, California. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Amazon John too. Amazon John's passion for cannabis medicine began with his first cultivation in 1970, so ahead of his time. With a background in environmental science, his 28 years of rainforest plant medicine experience have been profiled on TV and in documentaries. He currently maintains a research garden of multiple cultivars in California and is the co-owner of a licensed cannabis farm in Oregon. John and Olivia, I think you're both on the other end of the line. I'd like to welcome both of you to United in Compassion Symposium. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Helen.
Oh, so lovely to hear your beautiful voice. Oh, it's amazing. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, everybody.
They're all waving. It's fantastic. It's terrific.
I'm very thrilled to be a part of this wonderful campaign, so thank you for inviting us.
Oh, it's our absolute pleasure. And I know Lucy Haslam's so incredibly grateful for your presence here today and for really joining us to continue this important conversation. Today is predominantly our nurses conference, so we have some really special people in this room, and we've had some amazing guest speakers from the US this morning that have been taking us through the journey of medicinal cannabis around the world. But Olivia, you've had an amazing now 30-year relationship with cancer and medicinal cannabis. Are you using cannabis now? And if so, can you take us through that journey?
Yes, I use cannabis every day. Thank goodness for my husband who grows it for me and makes it for me. And I use it every day topically, and also take it by mouth, and it's really helped me a great deal with pain and discomfort and clarity of my brain. It's been amazing. I'm very, very appreciative for cannabis and for my husband for making access for me. And I hope that everybody else will have the same result.
What was it like for you, I guess, talking publicly about this for the first time? Did you feel trepidation? Did you feel as though there was still stigma to walk through in this conversation?
Well, a little bit, because there's so much going against it, or has been, and I want to be part of the movement to make it accessible to people, because it has been so wonderful in my life. It's changed my life.
So, and what were your preconceptions? I mean, obviously it's really transformational for you now, but what's been one of the biggest surprises for you on this journey?
That now I've found that just about everybody knows about cannabis and would like to have access to cannabis. And I'd like to have more information out there for the general public to know how wonderful it's been, for me particularly.
It must be amazing having an incredible partner and partnership with your husband, and learning about plant medicine as well, or plant-based medicine. Now it's really becoming quite a genre in its own right. But you know, I'm sure the education for you has been extraordinary, something that not many of us would get to access.
Incredible information. There's so
Hello?
what benefits it has for people. And I hope that everyone will have the benefit of getting to use it and trying it and realizing what a magnificent plant it is.
And what kind of things has cannabis helped you with more specifically?
I would say pain. I'm seeing a reduction in some of my tumors that have been visible, and they're going down. We apply it topically, and I take it by mouth also. So I see a reduction. It helps me with appetite, with my mood, makes me feel more relaxed. And it has been such great benefit. And I'm so proud of Lucy for what she's doing to bring this campaign in front of people, and also my husband for growing it for me and helping me so much in my life.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. I think certainly in Australia, Lucy has pioneered such an extraordinary movement, and I'm sure it will be actually, I believe your husband is on the line as well, so it'd be fantastic to hear from him as well. But before we do, Olivia, I heard you mention, and sorry, John, we're coming to you. You just mentioned clarity. I want to pick up on that, because I love that that's something that you don't always see associated with medicinal cannabis or in the conversation. But I think that's a really interesting, I guess, outcome for you. Can you take us through that?
Well, I just find that I'm able to think a bit more clearly, and it's been amazing. But the pain has been amazing too. I rarely have any pain because of the things that John has grown for me, and I smoke them occasionally, and I take them in my mouth, depending on the dosage or whatever I want to get through. But it's been incredible, and I've had no bad side effects at all.
Amazing, thank you. And John, I'm so sorry to cut you off. Welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm in a little different spot than Olivia right now.
Well, you're at this amazing conference. It sounds, are you doing a presentation?
I am, yeah. I'm doing a keynote on the medical track tomorrow morning.
Amazing. So I'm keen to actually watch a lot of your incredible documentaries and to learn about your educational pathway. Can you tell us what was the catalyst for you going down this pathway?
Well, the cannabis pathway was, the catalyst was, I was in college, and so I grew some cannabis in 1970. So that was the original association relationship with the plant. But later, in the Amazon rainforest is where I had a real indoctrination into plant medicine, and had a big turnaround in my health with a variety of Amazonian plants with hepatitis and Rocky Mountain spotted fever, Jurabeba, Alka-Shofra, Unida gato, Sangre Draga. So that's what really got me into plant medicine for 27 years. And 10 years ago, I started really getting interested in cannabis again as a plant medicine, as all the other plant medicines I was working with. And so I started growing some cannabis in California as a research project, and I grew 17 different chemovars, and quickly began to learn that all these chemovars and all these profile of cannabinoids and terpenes have different effects. So it's not just one cannabis thing. All of these profiles, and we know THC, we know CBD, and now we're recognizing CBG and CBC and CBDV and all the acidic components of the cannabinoids. And there's actually over 100 cannabinoids. So it's a huge profile of medicine that we have to tap into. You mentioned Olivia mentioned the clarity. And yes, there are certain chemovars that really give you a clarity in cannabis, and others that can make you sleepy, and others, that can obviously make you less clear. And
Yeah.
so it's been a wonderful journey for me to grow these different chemovars and to combine it and make formulas. And I'm fortunate I have a cannabis analyzer in my little lab at the ranch where I can actually run 15 different cannabinoids to know exactly what we have.
Listening to you, I'm really struck by, I guess, the complexity, but also, I guess, some of the enriching information that you must receive and see being associated with medicinal cannabis. In terms of education, where do you think we are in terms of how the public perceives it and the journey that we perhaps need to embark on here?
Well, I would say that, there's so much information. I mean, today was the first day of this conference here, and there were extraordinary and great research. I just left a seminar where being presented by a doctor at UCLA that's found some extraordinary interfacing between specific microbes in our microbiome. We know how important that is, the probiotics in our microbiome and different cannabinoids in relationship to cancer. So every day, there's enough research going on around that we're learning something. And I know I just saw actually Deddy and Dustin last week here in California. I know they're going to be participating in your conference, Deddy,
Yes.
Mary, and Dustin Sulak, and you've got Justin Sinclair there. So you've got some extraordinary talent and depth of information to be shared. So it's growing exponentially, the information, the research, the data that's rolling in. And there's more and more people interested in receiving that, just like the conference, United in Compassion is doing. And the public, we find, well, in America, it's very, very common. I mean, the public, I don't really see any stigma in America at all. Anyone who would like cannabis can simply go to a dispensary if they're 21 years old, and they'll have a broad range of products to choose from. I think the next step in the education in America, and I think it holds true for Australia as well, is just recognizing the different cannabinoids and the opportunities that we have with cannabis to address so many different aspects of our physiology. And that's where I think the education and the learning is really going on. Which combinations of cannabinoids and terpenes are going to give benefit for pain, for, say, in cancer, for example, for apoptosis, because some have actually been shown to be killing cancer cells. Others really help slow the migration of cells. Others will help slow the actual metastases of cells. Others will have an anti-angiogenesis effect, where you're cutting off the nutrient supply to the tumors. Others have broad spectrum anti-inflammatory benefit. So all of these things are extraordinarily important. Some will actually stimulate the immune response. So this is, I think, the next level of opportunity. And I know you've got some great people there that for your conference and for your nurses group that will be exposed to a lot of that probably the next couple of days.
Absolutely, and I think you're absolutely right in flagging that this is an extraordinary road ahead for our healthcare professionals. So thank you so much for highlighting that. John, I wanted to ask what kind of cannabis you're in fact cultivating and formulating, and why.
I've grown many different strains, or chemovars as we call them, and I've actually bred new genetics. I've bred over 53 new genetics of cannabis. And some of the cannabinoids I'm specifically interested in right now is a CBDV, the varin component, the CBG, CBC, and the acidic forms of these cannabinoids as well. I mean, we shouldn't leave out THC. THC is, it's your psychoactive component, but it's also very therapeutic. as well. And so I think it's the ratios and the combination of these and the associated terpenes that go along with them, or actually modulate some of the expression of the cannabinoids. So I have some new genetics in the beginning. Say, for example, the formula that I felt best. Say, for example, with Olivia, it took 21 different chemovars to include the cannabinoids I wanted. And with the breeding, I've got that down to 11 and then later to 6. And now there's 4. So it simplifies it quite a bit when you can get down to that level of formulation. And using these in conjunction with, this is, I think, a very important point that everyone's really kind of waking up to. I mean, cannabis is so popular around the world as a single botanical. It's opening the door, kind of a gateway to the rest of the botanical kingdom, which has extraordinary therapeutic values all their own. And what we're finding is a combination of cannabis and, in our case, some of the Amazonian botanicals, which have, the Amazonian botanicals already have proven capacities in like the anti-angiogenesis and apoptosis. And combining that with cannabis is, the synergy is really on an order of magnitude, because all of our cells have, you know, a cannabinoid receptor site. And so when you're combining it with other things, it's almost like providing a pathway for that synergy and that uptake of the other things you would be doing it with. I know the research is showing that's happening with radiation and chemotherapy even, that it actually makes it a little more effective. But I think that's probably, and this is my hypothesis, is just opening up the receptor sites so that it goes in more effectively. And as a neuroprotective, it protects the surrounding cells from any kind of damage from those type of therapies.
Incredible. Thank you so much. This is so illuminating, and I think all of us are absorbing such incredible information from you. Now, I wanted to, with our next question, Olivia just has to pretend she's not listening, or she put her hands over her ears, because I want to ask you, are you proud of what Olivia has achieved in regards to the medicinal cannabis conversation and her advocacy? Because I know it's not, particularly in the Australian context, we don't see, you know, it's changing. There are more high-profile identities coming out, but certainly, are you proud of what she's achieved there?
I'm extraordinarily proud of her in this endeavor, because, you know, it's Olivia Newton-John, you know, and it's not her persona. And I remember probably 8, 9 years ago when her publicist came to us and was all excited and said, hey, there's a tabloid that's going to release a story that you're using cannabis. And he was worried they're going to have a picture of Sandy smoking a joint and this sort of thing. And I just kind of laughed and said, that's not going to be the response. You know, that's not the way people are going to see this. They're going to understand that, hey, this is serious medicine. If Olivia says it's good, then it's got to be good. And that was exactly the response, because when she announced that she was using it, there's so much support that came in from that to help open that up. That was a few years ago, and of course the world has opened up substantially since then. But I could not be more proud of what Olivia is doing in this space, because it definitively, it's all about Olivia. It's all about healing and joy and love and compassion, and she knows that this is really changing the world for so many people.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm proud of you, my darling, because I couldn't have done it without you.
Well, I love you, darling. I wish you had us on video. I wish we were closer together. I miss you, sweetheart.
2 places, but yeah, I couldn't have done any of this without the support of my wonderful husband and his knowledge that I'm so lucky to live with such a brilliant man. And thank you, sweetheart.
Oh, I think we should
Thank
all
you, Doug.
clap that. That's amazing. Thank you. That's amazing. You know, because I think in Australia, we can't underestimate that it was another turning point, Olivia, when you did speak about this subject. It literally changed and raised the consciousness around, and people in this room are nodding because it was another turning point. It was, I think, the first time was when we saw Lucy's story, and the next time we saw that turning point was with your conversation. So we really are so grateful to you for continuing that conversation and what you've done in this area.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Lucy, for get the ball rolling. And I know it was under horrible circumstances, but I admire you so much for your tenacity and all you are doing. So thank you so much.
She's nodding, and we're getting, oh, she's crying. So that, yeah, and again, you're moving and touching people everywhere. I know we've got a little bit more time, so I hope you don't mind if we just keep chatting, because I was keen to ask both of you what your thinking is around patient access to cannabis in America and in Australia as well.
Well, in America, access isn't such a problem, but we know it is in Australia. And I just pray that people read about it, learn about it, listen to what is being said. And I hope that one day everyone will have access to cannabis if they need it, if they want it, if they're in pain. That's the whole idea. Fingers crossed.
Absolutely. And Olivia, this has become such an important part of your heart space. You've recently started the Olivia Newton-John Foundation to study plant medicine. Can you tell us a bit about that?
We're very excited, you know, with John's help, of course, that we're able to put together some programs, and we're raising money to research medicinal cannabis, and I'm hoping one day that will lead to a huge change in Australia so that everyone will have access to it.
Yeah, there's exciting research going on, as Olivia alludes to, and yeah, she created the Olivia Newton-John Foundation Fund. This is a new America-based fund specifically to research plant medicine. And of course, her goal is to find kinder, more effective treatments for cancer. And so some research things that are beginning to happen. There's a variety of formulas, some of which I've designed, and we're going to be studying in Canada. And be using chick embryos, where you introduce cancer cells into chick embryos, and it metastasizes in like 9 days. So it's a real fast cycle there of learning that can be used for that. And we have some other projects as well. There's a project going on at the ONJ Cancer Research Center. They're doing some research with cannabis for the quality of life in cancer patients, and that's already underway. It's in the initial stages, and it'll roll out in a couple of different stages there. You know, there's more work going even with as an antibiotic with Dr. Ethan Russo. It found a couple of combinations of cannabinoids that are 500 times as powerful as the most powerful antibiotic. So the people that are in the hospital and unfortunately dying of these, you know, antibiotic resistant bacteria, this is an order of magnitude, not 2 or 3 times as powerful, but 500 times as powerful as an antibiotic. Who would have imagined that? And I just talking this afternoon with Dr. Richard Van Bremen, and he did the work very recently with COVID. And CBDA, the acidic form of CBD, and CBGA, the acidic form, and THCA, the acidic form or the raw form of those cannabinoids as they come off the plant. You do a cold extraction, and these are a couple of the cannabinoids I'm interested in as actually preventing COVID. So you should, if you haven't heard about that, he's doing his presentation here tomorrow. You are going to hear about it because it's so significant as cannabis. So all of these things, but specifically, you know, our our goal. We really like the cancer research, you know, for all the personal reasons, and for because it affects so many people, and because there's so many good learnings that we're getting here just in the past couple of years, and more specifically in the past 6 months. So it's a very, very exciting time, and for all the nurses there in the room and the professionals that are involved in this, that it could not be more opportunity in the growth in this space, and you're going to see that happening worldwide. And I think Australia has a unique position. I mean, unfortunately, I think the access there is still restricted and limited, and I think I would go so far as to say I think that's criminal to keep this type of medicinal product away from patients, that anyone that really needs that. And however, Australia is famous for the research that's done. And so people like to have the research done in Australia because they know it's real, they know it's credible. You've got some of the best scientists in the world there. And I see a couple of opportunities, potentially more opportunities even at the ONJ Cancer Research Center there, where there's going to be potentially some very significant more research coming on this space.
That's
we have,
yeah.
With the fund, we're looking at a couple of projects to further that research in any country, in any place where there's some valid research going on with this.
That was my next question, actually, because you're really indicating some incredible frontiers in the research. And I think where we are at the moment in Australia is somewhere of a tipping point. And that's why symposiums like this are so important, because I think at the very least we'll see so many more connections being forged, but getting people enthused and energised about the research capabilities is such an important part. And what you're doing with the foundation and clinic is a really important part of that.
Thank you, Helen.
Now the lights are dimming in here. I think that means are we running out of time? It's weird things going on in this
We're running
room.
out of electricity.
Strange things going on here. There's a few spirits or something. I don't know.
Oh, that pesky
Just
power
bring
bill.
it. Not so funny.
I love it. Is there anything you'd like to add? Because I think we've covered some of the main points, but you know, I guess again, we'd like to thank you for the extraordinary work that you've done. You cannot imagine how significant it's been. Actually, we've got Lucy coming up here. Lucy should talk to you. I mean, come on. I mean, seriously, what am I doing here? Lucy, get over here.
Yay, Lucy.
I wasn't intending to steal the microphone. I was going to whisper in Helen's ear. One of my biggest regrets, I think, from the last symposium, John, when you spoke at the gala dinner, was I didn't have that filmed. And the reason I regretted it was because the words you spoke were so powerful about patient access in Australia. And I don't know if you can cast your mind back to then, but in Australia, nothing much has really changed. Our patient numbers are going up in spite of the regulations, because patients will do whatever they can to get their hands on medicine that relieves their symptoms. So they're paying huge costs. They're suffering very much with the stigma. They're having challenges in finding doctors who are willing to prescribe. They're sometimes not getting, I don't think, probably the best level of care that they can get in their pathway to cannabis. But John, can you remember anything that you said? I know we had a conversation when we first met about how challenging things were in Australia, but your synopsis of the Australian system was amazing, and I never filmed it, and that was my regret. But I think you likened it something like having a room full of people who were thirsty and had no water, and giving a couple of glasses to one or two people, and the 98 other people had to do without. So I don't know, can you cast your mind back to that and remind us, because they were such powerful words, and that's still very much our system.
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. And I wish you had recorded that too. Yeah, I mean, it's sad. It breaks my heart, you know, because I get used to being an American. We've got access to not only cannabis, but an extraordinary array of other, you know, botanicals and things. And it's very restricted, even on the botanical side in Australia. And you're right. You've got a boatload of people that are thirsting to death, and you've got the water, you've got the kegs and the pools of water, and you try to ration out, you know, a small glass to just 2 or 3 that are the closest and nearest to death. And then you applaud yourself because, hey, I could have just given it to 1 person, but I gave it to 3. And it's just heartbreaking, the amount of control and regulatory process there for something as simple and proven as cannabis. There's 30, and people say, well, we need to study it more. That's baloney. There's 35,000 peer-reviewed studies on cannabis.
Yeah.
And there's almost 4,000 in the last year. It's been studied. It doesn't have to be studied. There's nothing more studied. It's been more studied than any pharmaceutical that's ever been put out in the world. And so there's no excuse for not having people have access to it. Yeah. It breaks my heart to see anyone that you know could be helped with this and just not to have access. So as a result of that, people are going to find access. There's plenty of people growing cannabis in Australia. There's plenty of people, and I've visited some of them, and plenty of people that are making really good medicine, you know, and I guess you call it the gray market, or, you know, not the legalized market. And they know more about cannabis than many of the prescribers. Many of the prescribers are just reading a study or 2 and haven't really had the patient experience with it and don't know. So it just needs to open up, let people go with it. I mean, one fact that I think influences it, and this is just my thinking on it, is, you know, Australia is the largest producer of pharmaceutical opiates in the world.
Yeah.
And that's, most people don't recognize that.
Yeah.
But there's a gigantic, I mean, it's an opioid crisis. People are addicted to opioids. And I've seen several people, many people actually, come off of opioids using cannabis. And you can titrate people up, and you can titrate their opioids down over a period of about 6 weeks, and you can do that. So I think there's some influence there. It's nothing I can prove. That's just my insight, you know, in the way the world works. Because you think, who could possibly have an incentive not to allow people to have something as safe as this? I mean, it's completely safe. 35,000 peer-reviewed studies on it that demonstrate that. And, you know, I'm an optimistic person, and I always believe the truth will prevail. And Lucy, you've done so much. I mean, just to have a conference like this with a group of, you know, healthcare professionals to elucidate and illuminate this whole space would not have been possible, you know, 5 or 10 years ago. So it's changing. It's going to change very, very quickly, and just be ready for the change, because the people have already changed. It's just the regulators haven't gotten in sync with that yet.
Yeah. Look, John and Olivia, we've got a room here full of nurses, and a lot of people have said to me over the years, why are you spending so much time with nurses? I mean, I'm a nurse, so it just goes. But they haven't seen the value in getting nurses to come along on this journey. But nurses are the best advocates for their patients. They're not incentivized by money because they don't earn any. They really are incentivized by doing the best for their patients. And, you know, we've got a room full of them here, and we've got some leaders in nursing in Australia here And they've been saying really important things this morning, but I guess I'm just going to ask you, what would you say to the important people? All of these people are important, but to the leaders of the ANMF and the New South Wales Nursing and Midwifery Federation and the Queensland Nurses Union who are in the room today, and we have other nursing VIPs that are watching in virtually, what would you say to them as patient and carer who've walked the walk and who've lived through, you know, cancer's a really shitty disease, isn't it? And, you know, watching someone you love suffer with cancer is pretty tough. What would you say to them about how we can make things better for Australian patients so we don't have to wait another 20, 30 years for bureaucrats to snap out of it and get over themselves and do what's really about compassion?
Well,
I think you're doing it, Lucy. Spreading the word.
I would say that just nurses are, well, go ahead, honey.
No, go ahead. You're a better speaker than I am. Go ahead.
No, well, you'll have something very wonderful to say, and I'll just sound dry and boring. But you know, nurses are the best. I mean, nurses are the best. That's what I want to say right up front, because you're right. That's where the caregiving is, when you have a nurse and you feel that, right? And we've been around plenty of nurses in the last few years, and that's where the caring and the healing is happening. And the doctors will be given the guidance and the different things like that. But I was just in a session here today, and this is called the Cannabis Science Conference I'm at, of nurses, and they have an association here, and I'll get the name of it, Lucy, and pass that on to you. And they're worldwide. Any nurse can become a member of it. And they have all the information on cannabis and the feedback that everyone's getting with their patients on cannabis. And so they have been in the past through the same thing that your group will be going through, where they feel a little bit limited when you're bedside with a patient who's in horrific pain, and you know there's something that can help, and you feel compromised in your position, and you feel not empowered to really help them. That's got to be a very, very difficult position to be in. I mean, personally, if you're asking me, but this is Amazon John, and maybe a little bold, but there are people in Australia, like I say, that's making good medicine that's available. And sometimes with a loved one, you have to, you want to get the best care for them. And that's why cannabis has survived so many years of being illegal and scrutinized, but it's continued to grow, continued to flourish, simply because it works. And then once people research it, they realize, oh, we were wrong the whole time. We were being misled. And now you've got 35,000 published studies on cannabis, and it's here, it's going to grow. And I think the more the nurses can learn about it and how it can benefit their patients, to make their life more comfortable, and even way beyond that, the therapeutic value, but making the life comfortable is so critical.
Well, thank you. Look, I don't know how to thank you both enough. I know this has been a very big ask, but I think everyone in the room is incredibly grateful. I know I am. I remember exactly where I was when Olivia went public with her cannabis use. I nearly drove off the road. Because it's been so important to have that influence. And I think now it's time to hand the baton on, Olivia. And in Australia, I think I'm handing the baton on to lots of nurses to be the voice for their patients. So thank you very much for taking the time, even though you're apart, to join us. It's in the evening over there, and we're so grateful. And I think we're just about out of time. But I just don't know how to thank you enough. So I'll hand back to Helen now and say goodnight to both of you, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy. Well, we want to thank you for being brave to Thank you so
Yeah, we
much.
applaud you for being a real pioneer here, Lucy.
Yes. Great respect for you, Lucy. Thank you so much. And thank you, Helen.
Thank you. It's been wonderful to chat to you. I just have to
You're
tell you,
very-
I'm a fellow Novocastrian, by the way. So it's always been a fun fact. There's a few people going, yes, punching the air. So, but it's been wonderful to chat to both of you, and honestly, it's a conversation this room won't forget anytime soon. So thank you. You can't imagine how impactful it's been. So thank you. Lots of love and healing and great vibes from us, and we're just super grateful. So thank you.
Thank everyone who attended.
Righto.
Bye.
See you later. Bye. Oh, amazing. Just amazing. And I'm glad Lucy stepped in because fantastic questions. That looks so serious. It's all good. It's going so well. Isn't it going well? I think it's going well. First couple of hours, my gosh, we're just learning so much. Amazing people. So